And really nice to see some new faces. Welcome, everyone, if it's your first time. And welcome friends who come all the time, and welcome friends who come sometimes. This is a entirely volunteer-run center, which means that we are literally supported in being here through the generosity of many people. So sweet. You know, it's very unusual in this day and age to be in a place that pretty much does no advertising and, you know, is dedicated just to this possibility and opportunity of becoming more awake, more connected, more sane, more loving. So yeah, very grateful to all the people who make this place possible. And if it is your first night, there's one bathroom and water and tea in the back. Generally, we do a sit, conversation, reflection, and teachings. And I ask that maybe during the sit, not going to the back, if you can manage that. And otherwise, we're really fortunate because we have mace at the door, so we can feel at ease. Big tough mace. We're, yes, extremely fortunate for that huge, huge heart. And we don't need to, you know, worry about kind of the space and sounds. Sometimes folks come in later, so don't worry if you hear sounds. And especially if it's your first time, you know, and even if you've been here many times, giving yourself a chance to just take in this space, right? And all the other beings in this space. You know, getting to practice together is really uniquely supportive. Supportive in ways of, you know, that we understand through the Dharma, in that when you are practicing in Sangha or community of other beings who are dedicated to these shared ideas and values of becoming more sane, becoming more loving, that you know, accentuates the practice in many ways. And then from a basic level of our psychological well-being, if we feel relatively safe enough, other people can help us kind of regulate the nervous system, right? When we're practicing alone, sometimes it can feel hard to have that sense of support and connection with other beings. And to be here in this room and online, where we can really feel other people committed and connected, it's almost like we can let something down and let ourselves become more present and here together. We've been making our way through, not very fast actually, this really wonderful text. It's called The Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. It's an 8th century text. And there's contemporary commentary by the beloved Pema Chödrön, who I'm sure many of you know. And this 8th century text is by Shanti Deva. And the entire orientation of this text is, how do we become warriors of compassion? So how do we, through careful understanding and study of our own mind and heart and habits, how do we get really clear on the ways that we are in the way of our own awakening? And welcome, welcome. And how do we start to develop a heart that can be with the vicissitudes of despair and anger and hurt? So, as I often say, this text is designed for us to become warriors of compassion with a world that is on fire and that is so needed in these times. And yeah, really beautiful instruction. Last week, the chapter, in I think maybe the most well-known chapter in this book, which is on working with anger. And we need more than 1 week for that. So we're going to revisit this week on the themes and take it a bit more personal and reflective around how do we work with pretty understandable feelings of, anybody, rage? At least irritation, frustration. I mean, you know, it's a real, like, really understandable response to being a human in the world, being a human in the world in this time. And one of the most important parts of this text, which I think is such an important part of the path, is remembering why we are here and why we are doing this. And that's often described as Bhodicitta, or this just very tender, simple feeling in the heart of wanting to alleviate the suffering of other beings. And yeah, like just letting that simple desire feel so tender and true right here, wanting to alleviate the suffering of all other beings. And it can feel really abstract. I was talking with my dear spiritual friend Luma earlier about, it can feel like all beings, like, wait, wow, like how do I even envision? And so tonight I'd like to offer us a practice. We did a small version of it a couple weeks ago, of really bringing to mind beings and allowing that visualization of beings to help us in some ways maybe like tenderize and strengthen the heart, that heart of bodhicitta. So that will be our practice tonight. And with bodhicitta, I think shared this in the last couple weeks, it's really close to a feeling of heartbreak. It's really close. And yet there's something, like there's something where heartbreak can feel very personal and about me dealing. And whereas bodhicitta, that might be a kind of a spark of it, like, oh wow, this is hard, this is painful. It like very kind of naturally opens to that unconditioned, genuine heart of sorrow. The heart of sorrow for all beings, that we are all born and we will die. Everyone we love will die. And there is suffering, sometimes without reason. And just being open to that while still feeling a steadiness, because bodhicitta is not despair. Bodhicitta is not overwhelm, which means that bodhicitta has right within it equanimity, that quantum view that there are so many possibilities, so many multiplicities of realities and experiences that are happening at the same time, that we can kind of trust we don't know. And in that trusting that there's more than we know, we don't fall into the despair of, I know and it's all bad. I know and it's overwhelming. So bodhicitta has that profound tenderness that's very open, and also just that huge view, that equanimity view together. So that's some words on bodhicitta. Should we give it a spin? Give it a try? And so finding a posture that feels supportive and at ease. Maybe we'll give ourselves a chance to settle in by doing some nice opening of the chest, by lifting our shoulders to our ears, exhaling, pulling our shoulders back, opening the chest, twice more, inhaling up, releasing, one more time. Seeing if you can find that sense of the open wings, like the shoulders tipped just a little back, and that spacious openness of the chest. And then allowing ourselves to orient to the room and the space, finding the present moment through all the sounds that are around us. So for a couple moments, allowing ourselves to anchor our attention and awareness in sound. Finding a quality of attention that feels gentle and curious, not that kind of attention that's reaching out, trying to seek out a sound or know the source of a sound. Just that gentle, receptive, open receiving, letting sounds arise and pass away. Then expanding this sensory field to include whatever can be felt through the body, tactile sensations of warmth or coolness. Wherever the hands are touching the lap, likely there's warmth. Maybe even noticing the gentle sensations of the lips as they're touching. And if it feels comfortable to do so, noticing the sensations within the body. This could feel like energy moving. There could be some emotion residue, maybe a heaviness in the heart or a excitedness in the belly, just noticing the sensations. And of course, we'll get carried away by thoughts and memories and images. And with exquisite gentleness coming back. Releasing whatever has distracted us and returning fully to this experience of being in the body, being with the body, being established in this present moment. And then slowly noticing that as we are attending to the body, we can invite a quality of stillness. Yes, there's movement and undulation in the body, but this invitation for the body to no longer be going anywhere. And all of that momentum and energy of movement just gets to be right here. Consider the possibility that there's no way to do it wrong. There's just many opportunities to come back. And seeing if there's a possibility as we are in and with the body to soften around the eyes, and soften and loosen in the jaw, and bring a caring gentleness to the heart. And soften, and deepen our sense of presence in the belly. And to further support our mind and mindfulness, now narrowing the focus to the breath. And as we inhale, inviting a sense of vividness, clarity. And as we exhale, inviting relaxation and release. Every time we get carried away, we just relax more deeply, release whatever has captured our attention, and then return almost with a quality of rejoicing to be back in union with the breath and feeling what might even be experienced as a pleasurable sensation of having the mind follow the breath so closely. Much intimacy with the self and the present moment. As the beautiful instructions of Thich Nhat Hanh invite us, breathing in, rejoicing in the breathing in, being in this moment, and breathing out, knowing that this is a good moment. And then shifting from settling our body and speech in their natural states, moving towards this practice of Bhodicitta, boundless compassion. We find the strength of our posture, feeling the uprightness of the spine, held to earth by the base, and open to the sky, to the stars, to the heavens from the crown. This body, a beautiful bridge between heaven and earth. And for a couple moments, seeing if you can feel the dignity and integrity of being in practice. And turning towards, with compassion, the difficulties and challenges that abound all around us. And doing so from a place of resource, presence, and strength. And feeling the back body resourced by all the beings who've supported us to be here. Beings known and unknown. Beings in this realm and maybe other realms and previous realms. Recognizing that infinite web that allows us to be here in this moment, supported, resourced. And breathing in from the base of the spine to the crown. And breathing out, returning from the crown to the base, strengthening and lengthening that sense of our spine, our central channel. And then shifting attention and awareness to the space of the heart. And just that simple spark of the desire to alleviate other beings who are struggling. And feeling and imagining the capacity of the heart. Boundless, open. And in that aspiration to alleviate the suffering of all beings, let's begin by choosing a desire to alleviate the suffering of all beings who were born on this day. So feeling and imagining in the mind's eye, may all the beings born today know peace and ease. May all these beings know the true causes of suffering and be alleviated from the true causes of suffering. May all the beings who were born today be free. And seeing if the words bring forth a sense of feeling and care, and noticing whatever is present in the body. If it feels difficult or dull, no problem. If it feels strong and heartfelt, no problem. Bringing to mind all the beings today who are recovering from illness. Maybe they're being released from the hospital, maybe they're waking up with more energy, maybe receiving life-saving treatments or medicines. Imagining all the beings today who are recovering from illness. May they know peace and ease. May they see and know the causes of suffering and be alleviated from those causes of suffering. May they be free. Maybe just feeling and tending to whatever warmth or openness at the heart may be surfaced or revealed as we direct our compassion. Even more locally here, considering all the beings at San Francisco General Hospital who are starting a night shift. All the nurses, all the clerks, paramedics, all the doctors and specialists. Imagining all these beings starting or midway through their night shift in the hospital. May they know peace and ease. May they recognize and be alleviated from the true causes of suffering. May they be free. And then opening the aperture of the heart, especially to those who are experiencing profound uncertainty. Beings in this city and in many cities who are uncertain whether they will remain here, who have some instability in their residence in this country. So imagining the beings living in great uncertainty. May they know peace and ease. May they recognize and be alleviated from the true causes of suffering. May they be free. Imagining all the beings struggling with acute loss, who've lost a beloved in their life, and are facing this new world, who are learning a different kind of heartbreak, missing a specific being, a beloved being. May all those experiencing acute loss know peace and ease. May they recognize and be alleviated from the true causes of suffering. And may they be free. Again, checking in on the heart and the body. This isn't a mental activity. This is the mind, heart, and body training with focus and stability to open the heart, exercising that muscle of boundless compassion, clarifying and refining attention, holding in mind these beings. And shifting now to the more than human world. Considering and imagining all the winged beings, all the beings of the sky, the hummingbirds and the hawks and the egrets and the pigeons, the sparrows and the swallows. Imagined all the winged beings. Many on their migratory journey. May they know peace and ease. May they recognize and be free from true causes of suffering. May they be free. Imagining all the wonderful insect beings, the spiders, the dragonflies, butterflies, the crickets, and this huge, wide net of insect beings. And we extend our heart there. May they know peace and ease. May they be free from the causes of suffering. May they be perfectly free. And then coming all the way back here to this room, to friends online. All the beings in this room with so many varieties of suffering and difficulty, many joys and wonder. Holding in heart and mind and body the beings gathered here tonight together. May all these beings know peace and ease. May all these beings know the causes of suffering and be alleviated from suffering. May all these beings gathered here this evening be free. Letting it settle in the heart that this is an aspiration for us. We too are one of these beings. So for a couple moments, just feeling the accumulated sensations of exercising, visualizing, extending compassion. Noticing sensations in the face, in the chest, in the belly. And then releasing any concept, word, or image, and just allowing a natural state of spacious mind. Thank you for your practice. So one thing we're so fortunate to have opportunity to do here together is to reflect and to share. There is a great deal of benefit in reading and in listening, but we learn a whole lot from hearing ourselves talk, hearing others talk, just that sense of interconnection. And in order to do so here, each time we come together, it's a slightly different configuration. And so each time we come together, we have to reconstellate as a sangha, as a community, in which we are listening with compassion, in which we are speaking with compassion. And so really not feeling as though the practice ended because the bell was ringing, but to see one another with these eyes of the Bodhisattva, with the care. And as we're sharing, really kind of sharing from a place in which we're considering and caring for one another, right? And what we're saying and how we're saying it. And as we listen, doing the unbelievable difficult job of trying to withhold judgment, right? Just be in our experience of listening to one another. How does that sound? Yeah, fantastic. And so for folks here in person, we use a little mic. It's not amplified, just so folks online can hear. But making a little space here first just to hear any reflections or questions, any thoughts on that practice? Anything that came up that you want to share? Very likely, if you had a question or consideration, someone else shares it. So it would be nice to hear. Is that a lean over, Mace, as in you want to say something, or you're just checking out? Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. So glad. Yeah, any other questions, reflections? What did you notice? Where is the mic anyway? Oh, Jimmy. All right. Yeah.
I was really moved by that. Thank you. I was really moved by that very specific instruction, or very specific reminder of the people who are uncertain about their status here, and kind of bouncing it off my own experience of just uncertainty about a component in my life, and feeling so tender for like the acuity of what they're experiencing, and also like so emboldened to work with my own insecurity or uncertainty.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. It brought it home.
I'm so glad. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Nobody likes uncertainty. But here it is. Anybody else? Question or reflection on that practice? About the insects. Yeah. It's like they don't really, I'm like, do they need to be free? Yeah, sure. Why not? Maybe they'd be free from pesticides. I didn't want to give us too much agitation, so I kept it simple. Yeah. Any other reflections on that practice? Do you get the quality of bodhicitta? Like I feel like, again, when I was on this retreat for a month in February, like I got so beyond, or not beyond, but I got so loose in a way in my own mind that I was like, what is bodhicitta? Like what? Like what? Is it a feeling? Is it a thing? Is it a doing? And to just like keep connecting to it as tenderness, and just this tenderness that it can be such a beautiful inspiration. Like we can be so motivated by anger, right? And anxiety. Hey, I love anxiety is my number one motivator. But to be motivated by tenderness, like to have that infuse how we're moving through, it then means everything we're doing is bodhicitta. It's like informed by that tenderness, whether it's, noticing sauna walk, like this entire tree, and it's completely empty of, any leaf or blossom, but there's just this one blossom. And you can just like see it and be like, oh, that's pretty. But then there's like this tenderness of like, oh, that tree, it's getting through the winter. It's only managed energy for just this one blossom. Oh, may it continue to blossom. May these next rains not obliterate, this weather is so confusing. I hope the tree. So it's like that tenderness allows you to have like a different vision, like seeing of the world. And boy, it's hard to be tender out there, right? It can be, feel like an onslaught. However, this is my me search, my first person investigation, but I have it on kind of, I believe in those beings who have described it and written about it for hundreds and thousands of years, that it's actually more energetically taxing to contract around the tenderness than to live in the tenderness. And I'm not going to tell you that's true. I would just say investigate that. Because it's like, oh, it's too hard to be tender. And it's like really hard to be contracted. You're anxious or angry, you're reacting, and then you're having to release and react and release. And like, it's exhausting, right? And the tenderness is like, I don't know if it's an exhaustion, but it's kind of like that's the feeling, just, yeah, you're so blown apart, you don't put the pieces back together. Just like keep it open. So worth a try, especially for those of us who are big feelers. Yeah, Manny.
when you mentioned the hospital workers coming in for their night shift, were there any images or thoughts that come to mind as you were like saying that, or maybe like thinking about that after you mentioned it?
Yeah, I worked night shift at General. So, you know,
A lot of heaviness.
but also, I mean, for me, it was like the most meaningful time in my life. So there's such a dignity and integrity in showing up for others in the moment they need it. And, I just like, and night shift, I mean, anyone work night shift? Yeah, night shift people are fun. Day shift people, boring. Right? There's no paperwork. You're like, whatever. Anyway, so I guess I have a particular feeling about night shift. What about you?
I think I've had a tendency to date people in the medical field. I see, as they're going in, they're either like getting very excited
Yeah.
to work their shift, or they're already going into that shift knowing that like a lot of people work in like L&D, like there's a lot of emotions that are attached to that.
Yeah.
It amplifies when you're there. So I just think it's, to me, like I was envisioning a lot of people like de-stressing before work.
Yeah.
And then going into that situation like with a clear head and a little bit more stillness.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. And it, again, like Bhodicitta is so vast, like all beings. It's so nice if we have that tether of like, oh, I know people who've gone in and done that work. And it's funny when Phil's closed, I was like, how are people gonna do night shift now? I was like, I don't understand. You need a Phil's coffee before you go into work, but yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, and it is really sweet. I mean, there's all these beings. And recently, I learned this practice from a wonderful teacher. She's just a teacher in training. And I asked her a couple of times, where did you get it from? And this was on silent retreat, so by notes, and she never wrote back. So maybe it was hers. Her name's Eleni. And I would use it on retreat to go to sleep. Just think of groups of people and send them, metta or compassion or, bodhicitta really has a quality of compassion as opposed to the loving kindness, but it's still very sweet. And so many, like different versions that we can come up with, and all the beings and all the places. And yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, Andre. You guys ever seen those mics that are like cushy and you can like throw them? I'm like, do we do that? Let me get a little zany. Yeah. Okay.
How would you unpack, I mean, not define, more like, unpack or put in simple words, or I don't know how to say it. Like, how do you describe tenderness, if you have to put it in, like not a combination of words, like how do you, like define it? Like
Yeah.
loving kindness plus relaxation,
Yeah.
plus openness, like how would you like describe it to somebody who's like,
Yeah.
what that is or something?
Yeah. Do you have experiences of tenderness before you?
Yeah, but I'm curious about your description.
Yes. Okay. Damn it. I want to know yours. I do think it seems like it resonates with the feeling of empathy. Empathy is very specific to, like I have empathy for, a friend of mine who's going through great loss, lost his father. And that's the specific feeling of tenderness, like, wow, I know what it's like to lose a parent. Wow, like that tenderness. But it isn't quite so local. Like when I think of tenderness, it feels far more, not necessarily global, but like bigger than just one being. And then tenderness, yeah, I do think it is that like, I just am so blown apart, I don't know how to put the pieces together. And not in a bad way. Tenderness isn't overwhelm and despair. It is, becoming tenderized by the world includes like the exquisite beauty of the world. You can be tenderized by the blossoms on the tree, by the fact that so many beings were born today. There's so many new parents today. Like, like you'd be tenderized by just I'd say having that porous, kind of empathic resonance to the world. And without it hitting obstacles of like, oh man, I'm not a new parent. I don't know if I'll ever experience, like, you're not comparing, like, you're just allowing that full spectrum of experience because it's like, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. That, I don't know, it's not a formula, but it is like, I think warmth, I do think there's compassion in there, and but it's not that active. It's almost like Mathieu Ricard, a wonderful author, a humanitarian activist, and practitioner, he describes compassion when it's not an activity but a stance. And I feel like tenderness is part of the stance of compassion. I'm allowing myself to be tenderized by the world. Yes, Miriam. Oh, and Sarana. Oh, and Kimberly. Great.
Oh, I have kind of a comment on your last comment. I had heard that there's a practice that makes people really extremely happy, wishing someone happy every hour. So I tried it, and I couldn't believe that on the 4th or 5th hour, I picked someone I was super angry with. But I felt it genuinely. So that you just talking about picking different groups of people made me think of that. So
Yeah,
maybe I'll try that one again.
beautiful. I love that.
Hi, it's my first time here. I'm a little nervous. But I do want to ask this question. Is it like possible to feel tenderness while suffering?
Such a beautiful
Or,
question.
or does it like have to transform?
No. In some ways, it's like when we kind of surrender, we're going to talk about tonight, this persistent, desire to avoid our suffering through the mind of hope and fear. Like, so much tenderness can come. And, it's just, suffering has so many flavors and undulations that sometimes, we can almost not feel directly the suffering, and that might make it harder to feel the tenderness, because we're just like, it's not that we're dissociated, but we're just not inhabited out of self-preservation. But when we are with ourselves and with the suffering, I mean, it's so hard to let ourselves be tender with it, but it truly is. I've said this word already tonight, but like, it's exquisite. And it can almost feel like we have no skin on. Like, it's so sensitive when we're that close with our suffering. And yet, there's also, what's the word? Like a wholesomeness, because we're really with ourselves, So it doesn't necessarily feel like good, but it doesn't feel agitated. It doesn't feel overwhelmed. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Was that your hand, Sarana, or did I? Nope. Okay. So tonight, so beautifully set up. Oh my God, I have seasonal allergies and I sound like Kermit the Frog to myself. Do I sound like this to you guys? Yeah, I can't hear myself. That would be so fun. We do a little like Miss Piggy duet. Oh my God. Yeah, so back to anger and patience, the antidote to anger. Last week we talked about just there's, this whole chapter which really invites us to break through the chain of delusion that allows anger to arise and persist. A chain of delusion being, I'm right, someone else is wrong, or I'm wrong, right? And I definitely know this to be true, and it is indisputably not okay. And some of the common sources of anger could be, of course, like injustice at a larger scale, right? Society, culture, globally. But, at the local scale, a majority or a lot of our feelings of frustration and anger are not being seen, not being heard, not being met. Really frustrating, right? And there's just this huge momentum with that feeling, and we feel very right. And so a lot of the strategies that Shanti Deva is highlighting in this text are around how do we see more clearly? How do we break this, what he calls the chain of delusion? And the chain meaning there's like one thought and then another thought and another thought. And we've like created this whole story and world around our perception, which includes a sprinkling of reality, but a lot of our own past shit, right? Imposed. How do we cut through that chain of delusion? And, he has these three main categories, and I want us to kind of hit in on one and reflect on it. And this is, the first one, one of my favorite, of reframing any experience of frustration and anger as an opportunity for future training of more adversity, right? Like if you're feeling frustrated now, this is a great opportunity because you're going to feel even more frustrated in the future, which I think at this current political climate is like right on. So like, how do we meet what, even I don't watch the news, right? And so when I was buying this kombucha and I saw, someone who's elected to the highest seat of this country on the television. And, in that moment, just seeing and not being able to have a lot of spaciousness between, kind of rage and anger, right? And then there was this moment of like, we're only a couple months in here. Like, gotta really train for greater adversity. Like, you need to be able to look at that screen, and do I need to practice like boundless compassion in this moment? Sure. Am I there? No. So how do I use the multiple opportunities that present themselves on a day-to-day basis as that kind of training ground? And that attitude, which is just a mindset, which is like, man, this is good training. That's one way to work with patience. And then, the second, which I think is, in my opinion, the most profound and kind of almost all-encompassing, is really recognizing complexity. Like when we are struggling with anger, really recognize the complexity. And this is such a tender one, especially when we're angry at ourselves, right? For something we feel like we did wrong. Like, God, I can't believe I did that. I reacted in that same way towards my partner that I know will make them shut down. And I did it. Like, what the, that kind of anger towards ourselves, it can feel so certain. Like, who knows us better than us? Yeah, but we're so deluded in the way we see ourselves because we have so much inner critic built in and we are so kind of self-oriented. It's hard for us to get that outside perspective, which is why we need to reflect with trained professionals or friends, or ChatGPT does a really good job. Seriously, it's like, here's what happened. And they're like, no, you're fine. And of course, we're good. So just getting that perspective of complexity that just like, as I mentioned last week, more and more, it's like that quantum view of the world and this huge dance of all the causing conditions, all the potential factors that are contributing to the moment of when you did that same thing with your partner that makes them feel bad, And you're like, yeah, well, but think of all the things that happened earlier in the week. Think of, this work you're still doing to overcome, your feeling of grievance from taking on too much when you were a kid. Whatever it is, like we have to actually sometimes go to the bottom, especially with ourself, of recognizing the causes and conditions that lead to our projections. But when it's someone else who's making us angry, we're never going to know the full complexity of what led to it. And we have to kind of be satisfied with, I can't know the complexity. And that can actually let the mind rest a little bit. And this is, this is equanimity. This is a much bigger view. So the patience that recognizes complexity is like the patience of equanimity. And equanimity, it sounds so much cooler than patience. Like no one's like, yeah, I'm on a spiritual path practicing patience. It's like, does not sound very enticing or sexy. But like patience, it's everything. And patience does include an integrated understanding of equanimity, of the multitude and multiplicity of factors. And, within equanimity is the very deep, clear seeing. Everything is connected and everything is always changing, connected and changing. So that fixed feeling, getting hooked on the anger, we're just seeing this small part of the elephant, right? We're just seeing one part of the phenomena. And then the third, aspect of patience, which is also extremely profound in its own way, but feels a little more physiological. There's mental pieces, just developing distress tolerance. Because patience means we have to so obviously I'm using an example of myself here. So when I reacted in that way to my partner this weekend, and I said, like a snide remark that was like covering up my hurt, what I could have done is been with the feeling of hurt for like 90 seconds. But instead I had to like discharge that feeling so that I could be seen, like in my hurt, right? And so that distress tolerance, like, can we sit through that feeling wave of like, long enough that we can then recognize like, oh yeah, actually that's hurtful and I should talk to them about it, instead of the like, you never, or you always, like whatever version of that, never on the right path, never on the right path, and it's tough. Like it's so, as Luma was saying, like, to sit with uncertainty or to sit with agitation, we are not good. Like we exist in such a small bandwidth of comfort. Like yesterday, it was way too hot, right? Like it's like, it's so hot. Like, but it's true. And like if our sweater's a little itchy, it's like, I just can't. Like we're so like, we really struggle to be with discomfort. And it's really good training to be with discomfort. And it's really uncomfortable to be with anger and not discharge it or not kind of ruminate on it. So it's like this ultimate level of distress tolerance. And it has that quality of, what you would do with like weight training. Like you need to kind of build up to it, so the distress tolerance of someone who is like on their phone, on their bike, and you're like, oof. Feeling frustrated and be like, it's okay, and I'm here with it. I'm not going to yell at them as I bike by, even though they're making a hazard risk for everyone around them. Like, how do you start to work with the smaller things and develop that distress tolerance? I mean, it's amazing how powerfully we can feel these emotions. Like, can we take it as a interest? Like, wow, this is so uncomfortable. And, the so-called ideal in some ways of working with destructive or difficult emotions is to actually experience them in a way of like pure awareness. Right? We're not noticing the anger story. We're just with the pure experience in the body of the emotion. It's just really hard to do. Right. Yeah. Friends online, I hope you can see this adorable creature. Oh, you can. Totally stealing the show. So good. No. Oh, yeah. Already free. Probably just a bodhisattva who came back in this lifetime to be loving. But creating distress. So, I think when we're thinking about how do we develop patience, being able to, and I'm so glad this came up anyway, being able to be with uncertainty. So much of the activity of the mind, the spinning out of our stories, the creation of worlds, so much of it is trying to avoid just fundamental uncertainty. And this is often called in the traditions as the mind of hope and fear. And, this mind of hope and fear, it's a very dualistic way of seeing the world, for one. Like there's a good outcome and a bad outcome. And I need that good one. And I really don't want that bad one. When in truth, there's been a lot of things in my life that didn't go the way I wanted that just helped me out so much, right? Like you were sharing, Chris, right? Like the difficult experiences, right? That can open us up to just untold, insights and depth. And there's also this, the mind of hope and fear is so future oriented. It's so fixated on what's next, which is so crazy infuriating. Like on retreat, was planning my next retreat so often. Like, what? And I was really having a hard time on retreat too. So made no sense. But it's maybe why? It's maybe if I was on a retreat where there was a surf break nearby, it'd be a good retreat. Where can I do that? Costa Rica, Mexico? It's oh my God. And the thing about the mind of hope and fear is it just it keeps us totally kind of in bondage. There's no freedom for it because there is so much uncertainty. We can just perpetually be moving towards oh, I gotta get this next thing, gotta get away from this other thing. And, it's, it's a really good way to see how attached we are to certain outcomes of a better future. We start to catch on to the mind of hope and fear. And, many of you are familiar with what are sometimes called the 8 worldly dharmas or the 8 worldly winds. And the mind of hope and fear is the hope for pleasure, the fear of feeling something that is not pleasurable or difficult to feel, the hope to get something, job, partner, status, some other thing we want to gain, and then the fear of losing what we have. So much energy with this. The hope for praise, for people, telling us how great we are, and then the fear of criticism and being put down. And then this last one, just kind of interesting because it translates well to social media, which is the hope for fame, status, virality, I guess, being important, and then the fear of being, insignificant, unimportant, irrelevant. And these fundamental hopes and fears, this is what keeps us bound up in samsara and prevents us from being free. So I wanted to just kind of hear your thoughts on this. Does this resemble anything in your own mind, in your own way of being? How do you understand this mind of hope and fear, as it relates to trying to get more free? And, anger is in there. Again, we need patience to be with that yearning and craving of hope. And we need to be with patience to be with that aversion of fear, not wanting it, that anxiety. But yeah, I'd be curious from folks, what comes up as we talk about this mind of hope and fear? Yes, please. Hello.
Hi. I'm loving what you're sharing. I visited an old friend of mine, she's 95 years old, about a week ago, and just sharing about what's going on and anger, frustration. And she said, the thing about your generation is you gotta really toughen up. And I was really surprised by what she said, because she's very frail now. She's in a nursing home. She's actually right in the midst of a cancer diagnosis. She was getting tested the next day. She had every right to be frail, and also to be despondent with everything going on in this stage of her life. And for her to say, oh, and why? So she said, why? You've got to toughen up. But it was a lot of this, of what you're sharing, because she kind of, there is adversity. And building up, you use patience. This is a certain kind of patience that we're all being tested at.
Yeah.
And to find ways, in small ways, to test our patience, to work our patience, practice patience, or forbearance and perseverance.
Yeah.
Because we did not get to where we are with people like my friend Zoe by her not getting up and lifting herself and those around her.
Yeah.
And so she was very inspiring. And so hearing you tonight is further reinforcing that for me. It's kind of like, get up and not be, because there have been moments where I just, feel like, oh my God, I just need to lie down.
Yeah.
The opposite.
I'm so into lying down. Also, and I think what's so interesting, my dad's 91 and I know a lot of his cohort. And can you be tough and tender? Because also some of the ways that our contemporary culture has been informed by previous generations is like tough, no tender, and so it's like, that's a really cool mixture. The compassion warrior, right? Completely open heart, completely clear boundaries. That combination. Thank you, why? Yeah. Anybody else? Mind of hope and fear much? Oh, Mace, you know this one.
Oh, yes. I guess it's like my perennial question, which I know the answer that you're going to say, but
Let's do it anyway.
like the relationship between being like the aspiration, the Bodhisattva aspiration to hope. Yeah. And I think what you're going to say is it's about grasping, not grasping. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious.
And
Or
tell
maybe
me maybe one layer of like, what's hard about hope?
Oh, you mean why it causes suffering? Oh, because it's so just not fucking happening.
So then the hope creates an expectation
Yeah,
that's like unobtainable.
yeah. But it's still like, I guess just because I'm where I am is not, it's hard to not grasp it, the Bodhisattva. Like somehow I think that if I was really a Bodhisattva, I wouldn't suffer. Maybe
Oh, that's a
the
good question.
Maybe that's the real question, yeah.
Yeah, like what does the suffering of a bodhisattva feel like?
No, it's does a Bodhisattva suffer?
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course. Yeah, because a bodhisattva, a truly enlightened bodhisattva, we're all bodhisattvas in training. Like and I think, that's, because the Buddhas and the bodhisattvas, they're different, right? The Buddhas are enlightened and the bodhisattvas are like the rest of us, but their dedication and intention is pure. I do think the bodhisattva suffers if they're still clinging to sense of self. That's like, unfortunately, like the big, like even if you go beyond patience and equanimity, like the real chain of delusion, master sword is like, oh man, like this self-absorbed way that we exist in the world is the ultimate delusion. But it's like, it's so difficult because without it, we feel totally naked and vulnerable and like senseless, So I think, do bodhisattvas suffer? They suffer if they're attached to like, an outcome that would then make them feel like secure or stable. But I also, I think one level of your question that I've been thinking a lot about is I recognize how anxiety really foreshortens my understanding of time. When I feel anxious, I can only really think about the next 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days. And the Bodhisattva has like sacred vision. So they see like 700 years, right, in the future. And, I've heard the Dalai Lama say this before of like, don't despair. Like the work you're doing, it might make a difference in 700 years. And you're like, like, but that is the like time scale of sacred vision, And so there is like, so it's interesting because impatience, right? What's not patient is actually a form of anger, which is impatience. Like I want it to be different now. And then that requires, and this is the real challenge, it requires trust in the practice. And that, your own practice, that us practicing, that any of these small actions, like that they have their own momentum beyond what we can see and control and understand, which sounds like faith. Uh-oh, something really bad happened on the computer.
Wow.
There's way too much me. Oh boy, thank you. Woo.
Weird.
Sorry, like ego clinging, and then there I was. Thank you, Mace.
Thank you.
And for those who don't know Mace, like you are a bodhisattva. Truly, you are, and it hurts, Yeah. Okay, great. Jason.
Hey, I've been thinking and working a lot with hope and fear, just the way things are right now. And reading Pema Chödrön really helps. Nicole kind of introduced us to a bunch of different pieces of Pema Chödrön's when things fall apart. A lot of that is about hope and fear. And I feel like
Yeah.
one thing that has been really clear to me is like hope and fear don't go away. They don't end. You're not eradicating these things. But I'm beginning to realize like I have been so face planted in them that that's how I suffer. So I'm feeling the sense of like I don't have to give up the sensations of hope and fear.
Yeah.
They're valuable. They're realist. They're real. But I just don't have to like attach to it. It's given me a lot of perspective and freedom that is just awareness of like, oh, that's hope, huh? Whoa, that's intense.
Yeah.
I want. And I could, instead of being like starting to dream about it, wanting to actuate, I'm just like, oh, there it is.
Yes.
It's in the back seat. It's like I'm I'm the driver. Hope and fear are sitting in the back seat. They're trying to,
Yeah.
they are trying right now to like backseat drive. And I'm
Yeah.
like, shut up. You don't have the power. Just chill out.
Mm.
Anyway, it's been really freeing because
Mm.
I feel I could get put up a lot of barriers that with hope and fear, I have a very difficult time being tender.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's right.
That's
Thank
just
you.
my latest.
Yeah. Thanks for your insights and your tenderness. And there's this beautiful line from Jennifer Wellwood's poem, stop making deals for a safe passage. There isn't one anyway, and the cost is too high. And that's what all the ways that the mind of hope and fear keeps us bound up, prevents us from the tenderness. And the tenderness, I'm not trying to say tenderness is everything, but, there's something about being present in this world, moment by moment, that is extremely gratifying, extremely authentic and real and good. And if we are in the future trying to make a deal for a safe passage, we're not there. So thank you. I saw another hand down there, but I can't see the name because my eyes are not good enough. Madeline, do you still have a question?
I do, but my eyeball is on the clock, so I decided that it's not urgent and I don't have to
Oh,
ask
no.
it.
Come on.
All right, I'm just going to admit I travel a lot back and forth, and sometimes I hope for something so innocuous, which is, boy, I hope I catch the airport bus. From the second I get off the plane, I'm going to have this thought. And what I realized in the next 25 minutes is either I'm going to catch it or not, but I literally destroy those 25 minutes. I'm not
Yeah.
present at all. I'm quite contracted. I'm really ready to kill anybody who's in my path. I'm flying down escalators, getting on trains, and I'm simply not present. And one time I
Yeah.
realized that whether I get there or not, I just ruined 25 minutes. And as an older
Yes.
person, time is my only precious commodity. And I just chuck it out the door and I do it
Yeah.
again and again. And hope to me has again and again proven to just be suffering. And nobody that's not in Sangha understands the destructiveness that I feel about hope. And I just don't, I just need to stay awake to it and walk away from it. It's
Yeah.
never been a satisfying thing to hope for anything. It just is a
Mm,
contraction from that moment
mm,
till either I get it or I don't get it. It's still a contraction for that entire
yes.
time leading up to it. Yeah, that's all.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautifully said. Beautifully said. I mean, it's crazy. We could spend like 5 hours thinking about something that will take 5 minutes. Like, am I going to get there in time? Will it still be open? Can I get my precious thing I need? And then, and it's gone.
Yeah.
You know,
Or you can be afraid like that.
or anxious.
Anxious and afraid about those 5 minute things.
I mean, that
Right.
craving and that aversion, they are just so tight and so tight in us. Was there another question in the room?
Yeah, I had a question. We moved on. Let me see if I can remember. It was kind of like building off what we were talking about. I think what Mace was talking about. I guess I was curious about maybe a particular kind of suffering that a bodhisattva might experience, or like, because I've been trying to live that aspiration and trying to like figure these things out, kind of alone for a while. These things have arisen, but I guess I'm wondering, like, I've been working with people who have been, suffering lately, and I've noticed that like some of the same ways that I used to suffer that they're sort of going through has kind of arisen in me again.
Yeah.
And then I've had this conversation, like, I'm sure a bodhisattva would suffer this way, right? Like, there's no way that I've achieved this thing, right? Because I should be able to just like be with this person who's going through this thing and like, I have understanding. I see what's happening. And like, now I'm perfectly fine and not suffering.
Yeah.
Now that I say that out loud, maybe that's ridiculous, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I work with people who are, I mean, obviously it's not exactly the same thing, but like if there was like a spiritual journey or a journey, like this is kind of where you're at, this is kind of the milestone. Like, how do you kind of like work with that, keep the understanding that kind of lets you be there for them in like a real way, without being like overwhelmed, if that's how you were at, because that's kind of what I've experienced. Like at that stage, like I was really not doing well and it took a long time to get through it.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of, I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah. So happy you're doing well. And it's such a good question, and it's part of another question Mace often asks, actually, around the relationship of empathic distress and empathic concern, right? Where there's a caring and a presence, and it's really tricky when there's an immediate resonance. This reminds me of me or of a close someone. It can get tough. I work a lot in healthcare settings, and when there's, patients or clients for whom we have, there's some kind of, resonance, it can be easy to fall into the distress. And the distress is very actually self-related, sometimes called emerging with the patient or the client or the person we're working with. The empathic concern, there's still the care, but we're kind of like walking that knife's edge of being able to like hold our form like we did in the practice, like find the stability of the back and all the beings here to support us while opening the heart. Whereas I see the distress is like we're leaning too far towards. And there's no like thing I can tell you to do other than to pay attention to that oscillation of like, am I here? I'm not aloof. It's not I don't care, but I'm here with my concern and my compassion. Or am I like in it and it's starting to feel like personal material? And then to the other point of how do the bodhisattvas suffer or not suffer? Yeah, I want to think about it more. We think of Avalokiteshvara and, how the many-armed being of compassion, like all of the arms have eyes in which to see all the suffering of the world. And then all the suffering of the world was witnessed. And so then there was an ocean of tears that was shed. And that ocean of tears became an ocean of compassion. So, like, it's not that when we feel compassion, there's no distress. Like, sadness can be there. However, like you're describing, Eric, it's we don't get caught in it. Like, how do we not get caught in it? And it's, quite, quite a nuanced process, I would say. So, thank you for your question. So let's, dedicate the merit of our practice here. So bringing attention and awareness right back into the body. And feeling or imagining that closeness with our breath, that intimacy with the breath. And feeling whatever is present in the body and the energy in the body. And feeling and imagining that this is an energy that we could share and offer up. And so if it's comfortable, placing hands together in front of the heart and symbolically offering any energy that we've generated this evening, that all beings everywhere could feel safe and protected from inner and outer harms, that all beings everywhere could have a happy and calm mind, and that all beings everywhere would be healthy and strong, and that all beings everywhere would live a life of support and ease. Such a delight and refuge to be here with you all.